of the things about it is you don't realize how slow paced. You forget.
Oh, it is. Yes,
you forget how slow paced and moody it is because you remember all the epic moments, but the epic moments really don't start happening until an hour into the film.
Yes.
And this is an hour and like 45 minutes, right? Like it's not a super long runtime. And
also, I'd also just quickly say as well,
Yeah.
the interesting thing about the movie is the way that this is why it's insane to think it was like just instant junk or whatever that guy said. Because the other thing about the pacing is it's like masterfully controlled.
Yes.
Because you get like a punctuation of a crazy moment. The alien, it's killing someone, but then it's back to like now it's back to the spy thing of like who is it and what could it be? And that makes it. By the way, I actually thought even though it was slowly paced, it was very well paced. Like I think this is a mega compelling movie.
Yeah, I mean, look, not a lot of modern blockbusters these days have the restraint to not sprinkle in set pieces.
It's my number one complaint about modern blockbusters, by the way, is they blow their load in the first, 5 minutes.
Well,
or if it's
have a pre-credit spectacular now, right? Like, you've got to give motherfuckers the movie before the credits even roll. And then you have to lay this breadcrumb trail of like action set pieces or, high drama, whatever it is, to get people through to the conclusion in what is typically a bloated runtime because of those set pieces. This is a very taut movie. I think, there's a little bit of criticism about the end. There's a couple of little moments I might have, if you go back, you would tweak it. But to have the restraint of being like, okay, this is an alien. Here's the dog. We know we're dealing with an alien. Now let's have 50 minutes of fucking ramped up paranoia. I mean, it's really crazy how restrained it is, and it makes me wonder what those critics were watching because it's like this is not a schlocky horror movie. This is actually a really good sort of meditation on trust, paranoia, which of course is what the original short story from 1938 was about. And it's quite telling actually, because the guy who did the screenplay for this, it was Burt Lancaster's son.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Bill Lancaster he's called. He sadly died at 49. The only other famous screenplay he did was the Bad News Bears movies. And so he wrote this because he read the short story, which is called Who Goes There. It was published in 1938. And he said he didn't think it was a very good short story, but, the paranoia, the lack of trust, it really spoke to him. And so he cobbled together a script that then, it got reworked and reworked and reworked. But like as a distillation of what the original short story was about, this movie is not a remake of the 1951 film, The Thing from Another World. Which is one of John Carpenter's favorite movies because he loves Howard Hawks. But he didn't want to remake the movie because he said Howard Hawks is a genius. I'm not going to remake the movie. So they went back and remade, they did it from the text, the original text. And that's why you have a shapeshifter in this movie, but not a shapeshifter in 1951. But yeah, this movie is about, the subtext. It's about paranoia. It's about how humans can't trust each other. It's about how we can't come together in a crisis, no matter what it is. Even an existential alien threat, we still can't cooperate. So
that was actually a note I even made, was that I thought one of the strengths of the movie was that it didn't try to be incredibly ambitious once the initial premise is established. It sticks to the theme of, like Monty says, like Among Us, except actually the joke is this movie makes me realize you could make a better version of Among Us if when you killed the person you could disguise yourself as them. That would be the real paranoia, wouldn't it? Because then you'd have to think, like, did they do that test before, like you do in Among Us? Like, oh, it's not the same, because that's the real thing. The whole premise of the whole thing is who is the alien, who is the thing right now,
and you don't know how many there are either.
No, and so the point is, as you're watching it, it's not that one of them is, and they're going to stop him. It's that not only might it eventually be all of them, but there is going to be a point where you're going to have to watch, like really early on, when you get the sense, because the other thing that's insane, like you're saying, Richard, is it's instantly obvious what the gimmick is. And yes, I saw it years ago, but I remember watching it. And first of all, you don't need the craft landing, right? Just the thing of like the dog. You're surely asking yourself, why do they keep showing a dog on screen? Why is this husky being shown? And why would Norwegians go mental trying to kill it? Like the whole point of why they injure this guy is they're clearly obsessively, they must kill this husky. They're willing to essentially go into enemy territory and be shot as a result cool because they can sort of sense, as you later find out, existential terror of it. By the way, great opening. I actually think this opening's even better in hindsight because when you know what's going to happen, it's genius. It's so understated.
The foreshadowing. Oh, okay, we'll get into this. So let me explain the rest of the film and kind of what happens so you guys are all on the same page with us, which is what I love about the first hour is that there's insane foreshadowing. They go and visit the Norwegian facility because they're like, why were these guys shooting at this dog? Yeah. The foreshadowing of what everything is just fucked up there, and they find the UFO. Then they come back, they realize what's going on, right? And they have to kill the other dogs as it tries to possess other dogs, but it's already been alone with one of the members of the crew. And so it is a game of which one of these people or how many of these people are the aliens. It ends up basically, you fast forward, they find some of the aliens via this blood test that they start running. But by the end of the film, they effectively have to blow up the base because it's trying to, at that point in time, it realizes it can't escape. And it's, taken over a guy and is trying to build like a mini UFO under the ice to escape. And so when it realizes it can't escape, it's trying to basically go back into hibernation in the cold for someone else to find it, they suspect at some point in time, or for at least to not die. So they end up blowing up the entire base. But the end of the movie is, Kurt Russell and the last other remaining guy, not knowing if the other person, they're slowly freezing to death out in the Antarctic, not knowing whether the other person is the thing or not, or if neither of them are. And so at that point in time, it just ends. So it's like, well, fuck it, man. You don't know if they live. You assume they die, but how it goes, you don't really know. But what I loved about this movie is the foreshadowing. It's so well constructed because the first shot of Kurt Russell, they're bored as fuck in the Antarctic, right? He's drinking this whiskey and he's playing chess against this computer. The computer checkmates him and he
This part's stupid as fuck, though. Wait, that's like some of that. You can only put this part in an American 80s movie because he loses and he's supposed to show he's like sort of an anti-hero, fuck off guy. Yeah. He opens a compartment. I don't know why this compartment exists with like all transistors in. Pauses drinking like a comedy skit, and then just goes cheating, bitch.
I love that.
That's the only part that hasn't aged well.
So, I love it. I fucking love it. No,
fuck you for even putting that in a movie. That's bad.
No, what I love about that is because
it's just on the computer.
Yes, because it's a mirror of the end of the movie where he destroys the base. He gets checkmated by the thing, and he has to destroy the base in order to solve the situation.
Cheating bitch.
It's just it's like a perfect foreshadowing of the ending. And I think it's it is a cheesy introduction to his character, but it does show who McCready is, and it is consistent with his character and his actions throughout the film. So I really enjoyed it.
One thing I was going to say earlier as well is the way you know that they did the central premise of who is it, and it can be someone who earlier wasn't it, who was working against it, is the first person that you suspect is the guy who looks after all the dogs, right? And that guy, if you remember, when early on they're sort of figuring out it can be other people, he does that thing where there's this scene where he's talking with the main characters and he has like a really like blank stare, like, I think you're right. And and you think to yourself, right, he must be the first one. He must be the first guy it is. It later turns out when they kill him, he wasn't even it. He was never it, but they immediately put the sense within you that you're not just watching these characters anymore. You have to start trying to think, is it that? And crucially, one of the best things this movie does is it doesn't give you all the answers. Like there's loads of mysteries in it, like who did destroy the blood bank? You know what I mean? Who did do this other thing there? The genius of it is by the end, everyone's been suspected. There's even a brief scene where McCready is suspected. You even think when you see him, you hear him burst in from the outside and you think he's supposed to be dead already. You're thinking like, fuck, is that the twist? Is he it now? Then at the end, same thing when the character, I forget the name, that actor who did the voice of Spawn in the animated series, when that guy turns up, you think maybe he is it as well, because again, there's only two of them left at the end. Like they always keep that central thing that you'll never actually fully know, essentially, until you do the test or it exposes itself. Like you're with the characters, you're never going to fully know all the answers, and they don't give you extra explanation. Yeah, you get like the basics from the doctor, who, by the way, that angle is obviously like almost like a fucking thing from, it's like a mirror of Alien, isn't it? Like, that's the fucking Ian Hurt guy who's just sort of like, right, this is a life form that, he's just giving you the basics, right? Just so you have the very basic premise that it can transform and it can look like humans, but that's it. That's all you get. And just like an alien, it's like a perfect killer machine. That's it. You don't get more than that. You don't get the backstory. Because by the way, how would they have that backstory? They are just guys who found it hundreds of thousands of years later. And here's another thing that I thought's genius. Not only when you immediately see the dog, do you get the sense of what it could shapeshift, but then no one ever has to explain to you this, which would to an idiot, this would be the reply guy thing. They'd go, it doesn't make sense. So when it's human, it talks and it is like that character. But then when it's not human, it's just like, can't understand anything. It's it. No, that's the genius of it. You instantly accept this idea, like you're saying, Monte, of like when it takes over someone, it can actually become them. But it's only doing that for its own ends. It's clearly not actually like interacting with us. In fact, it doesn't even have the capacity seemingly to speak English or talk when it's not a human, and it's just, but you don't need that explained. You don't need to explore that. You instantly get it the second you see it, and you can keep going with the movie. I never found that like suspicious at all. And I love the idea for the cosmic horror angle that the doctor guy, that's the start of the cosmic horror, because he's the only person who gets the first answers, and what does it do? Drive him fucking mad, and he basically just goes nuts. Like, he's even one they have to quarantine off, so there's not that doctor helping him out, because actually he's the first person that, like, even though he hasn't been taken over yet, he's gone fucking mad. That's why that angle on the reviewer saying that they all like, oh, the characters do things that don't make sense. I thought one of the best things about this movie is because it's a slow burner for the first hour, like Richard said, they introduce totally distinct characters. No two characters are the same. They're incredibly archetypal types of American character and human at the time. And the best thing is, they all, in some ways, even when they seem to have been taken over, act out what their character would be. So like that guy was like the captain guy at first. Yeah, he kills someone, so you see he's like in charge. But then his first reaction to the paranoia is like, get away from me, it's all of you. Like, and then they're like, right, you're gonna have to give us that gun, and someone else gonna have to take it. Like, everyone actually has like there actually is quite a logical sort of reason they all do things, I thought.
I think that's sort of expressed quite well as well. You know, obviously with the famous defibrillation scene, when Norris dies. Well, just prior to that scene, Norris, they say, look, right, so Gary is the leader of the fucking group, not actually McCready, as you know, Monte says, he's just a pilot. So there's this, but he gets suspected because some blood banks get destroyed, and he's the only dude with the key. He holds the,
and they want the blood bank to test people's blood against, because so the idea is
what a control.
Yeah, there's a blood bank that has a copy, like basically blood that has been drawn from all of the crew members previously in case they need a blood transfusion, obviously as a medical accident. And so they have a control sample of old blood from before the alien came. So they're going to use that to compare it to their current blood. Somebody, which we never actually figure out who it is, destroys the blood samples, so they can't do that.
Yeah, and
one last thing I would say, because Richard mentioned it, I actually, now that you say that, if you just remove the spaceship coming down, it's an even better movie. Like, if it's just the dog and why are they trying to kill it, that would make the slow reveal if it's an alien even more fucking insane when they go to the base there.
Like I said, the studio really wanted to bank on the alien success, unfortunately. But yeah, so Gary, he says, like, look, I'm gonna put down the gun and we'll put somebody in charge. And Keith David's character, Childs, who's like the hothead of the group, he comes in and goes, I'll be in charge then. And then McCready's like, perhaps someone a bit more even-tempered, right? And so they turn to Norris, who's like, you know, the tubby, redhead, you know, pussy of the group, essentially.
Looks like he's from the movie Porky's.
yeah, right? And he just turns around and with a dead, vacant face, he says, I'm not up to it.
Norris, I can't see anybody objecting to you.
I'm sorry, fellas, but I'm not up to it.
And what's interesting is the actor said he obviously knew in that scene he was the thing, he was infected. And so he said he was trying to imagine what it would be like to, like, he said for him, the thing would be confused. It doesn't understand what's going on. It's just trying to get through the situation and survive until it can get somewhere alone or get out of the base or infect everybody, right? So he said the way he played that scene was to be like, I'm not up to it, as a reflex from the thing. So it didn't have to assume any other responsibility because that might arouse suspicion. And I think
even
it's
got
like
the vibe,
little touches like that.
If you notice, that is the one little tell, but because of the way they tell the story, you don't pick up on this the first time you watch it. The one tell is like that. Even though it can talk and even though it can do things and execute plans, if you actually watch when it has taken over someone and you later find that out, it is more like Among Us. It's like when you're the imposter, but you pretend to be doing the tasks. They just tend to be stood in the back, doing them like, yep, and then following around. But they're not. It's not giving great speeches and like things. It's gonna actually, if anything, like you say, Richard, it's minimal. It wants to avoid detection.
Yeah.
It's more just there. So you just think, well, it's with them. It can't be that, and then it's revealed later.
Yeah, and that stuff is great because one of the things I really like about the performances, by the way, Donald Moffat, who plays Gary, is fucking brilliant. I think he might have the line of the movie when he screams, "But I don't want to spend the rest of the winter." Gary, take his fucking couch, and he just has a breakdown. So good.
Also, one of the best scenes ever because that's when they've tied them all up right, and they're going to test it out. It's already transforming and going fucking mental, and they're obviously just going, "Oh, fucking untie us then." It's obviously that, isn't it? And they're just like, it's mega,
it's so good. The blood test jump scare is brilliant.
So that scene in particular. So how to explain how they detect the thing is they take blood from everybody, and based off of Norris's death, where each piece of it, so basically they have this fantastic scene where it opens up this mouth and bites off the doctor's arms, and it's super gross, and the doctor dies, and then his head pops off and it starts growing spider legs and like running away. It's hilarious and ridiculous and scary. It's wonderful. But McCready makes an observation that every piece of the body has a self-preservation mechanism because when they
literally even blood can move,
right? And because when it comes apart and operates as independent entities. So he says, okay, well, if that's the case, then any blood that we take from it should react with a self-preservation instinct. And so they've been using flamethrowers this whole movie, which, by the way, is just so 1980s and hilarious. Nobody ever explains why you would need a fucking flamethrower to do anything in Antarctica. Why would you need a flamethrower in Antarctica? Doesn't matter. It's cool as fuck that they shoot flamethrowers. Also, every movie has to have flamethrowers. Aliens also had flamethrowers. Whatever. It's fine. It was a post-Vietnam fantasy. So they use they superheat in the pilot light on the flamethrower. They superheat a wire, put everybody's blood in petri dishes, and basically are burning the blood to figure out who in fact is the thing. It's when they discover another crew member has become the thing when they're all tied to this ridiculous couch, testing everybody. McCready basically is holding them hostage with a flamethrower and dynamite because he's confident he's not the thing. And the only way he's going to figure it out is by...
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.